remember when I wrote about 4 organs for Time Out, I called it a big prick tease. What interested me was the harmony and the way in which this kind of harmony sort of stretched itself out and was always on the point of resolving itself and didn't.
Still on the fringes of the contemporary music world, Reich's 1970 work, 4 Organs, demonstrated another unconventional approach to harmony, the gradual extension of a single chord.
In a sense, what that really is kind of going... but it's taken a long time to do it, and because it's not this, instead it's... and there's no bass. If you resolve a chord, if you added to that, it gets rather dull. You're weighting it down. But if you keep it up, well, it's A, and I'm not sure if it's, could it be major or could it be, you don't know. Fine, you don't know.
This radical approach to harmony would cause a furore in the more conventional classical world.
Michael Tilson Thomas, the then assistant conductor of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, said, "Would you come to Boston and play this with members of the Boston Symphony Orchestra?" I said, "Are you sure?"
I, in the end, convinced him to do it. We did the piece in Boston, and people in Boston were somewhat nonplussed, but nonetheless, it happened. Then when we brought the piece to Carnegie Hall, the Boston Symphony's series there, the audience was, should we say, much more divided in its opinions. In fact, they began making such a ruckus as the piece was taking place. Little cat calls here and there, then a kind of murmur of hostility there, and yelling began. And in the end, so much noise was made that it was almost impossible for us playing the music to hear the music.
There was so much noise in the audience that we began to lose our place, because you really have to hear the maracas, and you have to sort of count for crazy as this thing is gradually getting longer, this cadence is getting longer and longer. So Michael started screaming out the numbers.
26, 27, 28, 29. That we were able to keep the piece on course. We finished it, there was a moment of silence, and then there was an absolute avalanche, or kind of geological cataclysm of boos and outraged sounds of the audience.
I was like white as a sheet, and Mike was saying, he said, "This is great." He said, "This is history." He said, what went through my mind was, Nijinsky screaming out the numbers during the Rite of Spring to the dancers.
I said to him, "This is the most fabulous thing that's happened in New York, and I don't know how long, and for sure, by tomorrow, everyone in the world is going to hear about you and your music and have an idea that they've got to be listening to it in order to know what is what at this moment in time."
Crestfallen after the controversy surrounding 4 Organs, Reich sought confirmation that the rhythmic patterns that formed the basis of his music had the potential to develop. Always the drummer, he went to Ghana to study African drumming.
Everybody else in the world was writing like Stockhausen and Boulez, and I felt like, where am I? Is this really terra firma, or am I floating around in the cosmos here somewhere? So going to Africa and meeting these musicians and playing this music was like having a big pat on the back saying, yes, this is a real tradition. You're not alone. This has been going on for thousands of years, just not in Europe and in America.
Illness forced his return to the States after a few weeks, but convinced he was on the right path, he began work on his first large-scale composition, drumming.
All right, to the top. How do you guys get into this? Camera's rolling. Camera's rolling. Hey, it's Radio City. The maquettes have already finished. Come on, here we go.
He enlarged the ensemble that he'd formed a few years earlier, and it still performs today. The basis of the piece is a single rhythm pattern that's developed through phase shifting, a gradual separation of the same pattern performed by different percussion instruments.
Steve lucked out because he very quickly got associated with some very fine players in New York City. And they sort of networked on his behalf with other drummers, percussionists. And the ensemble that resulted was very cohesive. And then, of course, there was a commitment to the music. And if Steve hadn't had that from us, he couldn't have done what he did, I believe, because we put in long hours for nothing.
When we came to the rehearsals, he would present us with his composition for the week, but he would not show us notation for it. He would just teach it to us by rote. So all the players learned it by memorizing it. There's a sequence of events that takes place, and you just memorize that sequence, and you understand that once one thing is finished, then the next is supposed to take place.
You guys aren't together, then we can't tell.
Look, we've done this stuff a lot, and it seems to me that it's a slow fade. That's what's interesting about it musically.
No, we weren't even trying to phase. We just weren't locking in from the start.
Well,
Once I start playing, then
Just go with it.
yeah, you just, I guess you have
One more
you
time.
have to. Yeah, you just got it wherever.
Jim and I were right together when we stopped playing.
We were having a little problem deciding whether the people who were phasing, whether they should speed up, get faster to reach the next interlocking position, or slow down. You could phase either way. Speeding up creates a little more excitement and an energetic feeling. So we were just trying to determine the best way in that situation to do the phasing.
because they're so far away, and because they're playing so strong, you've got to have to push marimba 3 in general to get any kind of a chicka 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 chicka. Otherwise, this sounds like there's two guys playing. Okay. In general, you want to bring up the real marimba.
Who wrote this piece of fucking?
I don't know.